Good afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock and time to start our daily broadcast with the Financial Wellness COPEC organization. Today, again, we have our speaker is Wengerd. I'm going to be introducing her in just a few minutes. And as you may be getting accustomed to knowing now that our broadcasts start every day at 2 o'clock. They'll run until approximately 2:30. And then we'll have a question and answer period. And we'll kind of keep the lines open from 2:30 to 3 o'clock. You're very encouraged to answer questions as we go along, and we'll address those at 2:30. My name is Jerry Snyder, of course, and I'm going to be your host today. I kind of share those duties with Jay Lindner, so he and I will be sharing the duties of host as we offer these programs. And since many of our speakers are connected with the financial industry, we do need to do some disclosures. And some of our speakers actually work on the, or members of the board of directors of COPEC. So I'm going to put this slide up for disclosures and give you a few minutes to look at that. And then I'll be back with you, and I'll be silent until then. Well, thanks for your patience. For those of you who are just joining us for the first time, I wanted to mention again that programs are being brought to you by COPEC, stands for the Central Ohio Professional Education Council. And of course, we're a nonprofit organization, started about 2004, with the primary mission of providing good educational, non-sales type of information for you. And then, of course, these are live stream programs, which will be daily at 2 o'clock. Occasionally, we have a little connectivity problem with our IT organization here, but if you just show some patience, we'll get back things running again if that is to occur. The only exceptions is holidays. Certain holidays, of course, we won't be broadcasting, but other than that, you can rely on a program daily at 2 o'clock. And of course, many of the programs are recorded, so feel free to share those with other friends and family, or maybe even organizations that you belong to. And you'll see on the right side here that we have many good educated speakers to put before you as time goes on. I'm going to move ahead here, and then we'll try to get caught up with the screen, but we do show the programs a month in advance. If you go into copec.org, which is our website, you'll see 6 different tiles there which present and provide information on all of our upcoming programs. I think we're in good shape now, so thank you for your patience on that. These are the 6 tiles that I was alluding to, and of course the daily programs will be shown there, and you can look months in advance to look at programs that may particularly interest you. On the other hand, we'd like to have you join us every day, if possible. And then COPEC Retirement Decisions. We have those programs 2 or 3 times a year, and we've had those at the Fawcett Center in the past. If we are open for those again, we're going to be able to provide those. Otherwise, they may be on Zoom. We get in depth there on retirement planning. People closer to retirement might particularly benefit. We talk a lot about the state pension programs. And then moving on, we also have what we call Financial Fridays, and they are at Friday actually at 11 o'clock. And those are more lecture series type programs versus discussion type programs that we have today. And again, many of the same topics, but we're able to get into those in more depth. Finally, if you are a part of an organization or part of a company department, that might enjoy these programs, either through recording or in-person programs on a special Zoom. We are likely to be able to offer that and provide that for you. Then most speakers do provide an individual consultation lasting up to 15 minutes. You can get that and order that through the website as well. So let's move on to our topic of the day. Lori Wengerd is with us. She's kind of doing double duty this month because we had her last week as well. And as you see here, she is president and owner of her own home care agency, which has over 200 employees, I found out earlier. And she has done many, many, many community projects, and it's very much a great resource for the whole area of healthcare and long-term care. She serves on a number of boards, one being Alzheimer's, and I believe she was a past board member of the Parkinson's Foundation as well. Near and dear to me, because I served on that board as well, is the Upper Arlington Commission on Aging, and Lori is the current chairman of that organization as well. So Lori, it's over to you at this point, and maybe start by telling us what you're going to talk about today.
Well, thank you, Jerry, and hi, everyone. Today I'm going to talk to you about caring for your aging loved one. That is a topic near and dear to my heart, not just because of what I do for a living, but because I have been that family caregiver for my own parents who died in 2018 and 2020, both of them in their own home, both of them with dementia, with full-time care, 2 hours from me and my siblings. So from what you hear today, it comes from direct experience with what this is all about. And you know, anybody who calls our office will tell you that we all can share our experiences on what it is like to care for a loved one. And it's quite an involved topic, Jerry. So we have a lot to go over today.
Well, you being an owner of a home care agency, when people call in to you, what steps do you take them through to help them with their caregiving needs?
Yeah, a lot of times those calls come in and they're we can almost divide them by crisis call. People say, oh my gosh, my dad is being released tomorrow from the hospital and we have no idea what to do. To my mother was just diagnosed with Alzheimer's. We're starting to think about what we need to do. So the first thing I like to do is just really assess where they are in the need cycle. And both of those are something we can deal with, emergency and the long-term thought process. But I often like to start really listening to that person who called me in, whether it's a daughter, son, or spouse, or niece or nephew in a lot of cases, or a lot of people don't have children nowadays. So they're getting other family members who need to care for them. So a lot of times that first discussion is all about what are you able to do? And, you know, what is your experience in caregiving? How do you feel about the fact that you're going to be needed? And that's, you can hear so much in that, just asking those couple of questions. So it's really important for us to hear. And so some people are, you know, one thing I can tell you about caregiving, it's a broad topic. There is caregiving as in direct care. Can I be the one to help mom take a shower, to bring her food every day, to come over and mow the lawn, to take her into my home to live? That's what we would call like a direct care. And then there's a whole nother kind of caregiving that really a lot of us do, and that's just that advocacy. So I'd like to talk a little bit today, Jerry, about what the considerations are for people who are thinking about, what am I going to do with this older loved one in my life?
Right. And, you know, when we're talking about caring for a mom or dad, there might be multiple siblings. And how's the dynamics occur between the siblings?
Yeah, that is, you know, we spend a lot of time talking to families about that. And the best families out there, including my own, because I have 3 siblings, so there's 4 of us that were dealing with my parents, is really recognizing what each of you is best at and not expecting the same level of interaction or involvement from every single person. Like those kind of expectations can set you up for failure, for fights, for issues between siblings. So if somebody is good at, my one sister loves, you know, she she loves the whole concept of online bill pay, and it was perfect for her to be able to set up my parents' banking and get everything going with that, and making sure the bills were paid, and having those financial conversations with my parents. My brother loved doing the things with the household. I didn't mind doing the direct care and working with the caregivers because that's what I know best. So right up front, don't, keep your expectations realistic, and don't, if you can do the direct care and you have a sister who just says, I'm not doing that, understand that, right? Because Jerry, I don't know if you've had to care for a loved one, but man, when it comes time for you to step in to care, and they're not always aging parents, right? Sometimes we have siblings that need care, or, children who've needed care. So when that opportunity arises, it can be the best experience of your life. Sometimes, you have to remind yourself, this is why we're put here on this earth to care for each other. This is what I am called to do, and how I show up in this task really defines me as a person. So that's
I agree.
Really,
in my experience, I never got to know my dad so well as that last 6 months of helping him. It brought us together so much closer. On the other hand, I needed to report to siblings out of town. So it was a mixed bag of pressure and joy.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
It's not like we didn't, the only time we really felt completely at peace, because it was years, when you have dementia or a lot of diseases, it's not like, a couple days, right, Jerry? It's a long time. And when my parents built their house in 1966, and they both died in their home. And when my dad died, he died first in 18. We were all four there. We all got there. The caregiver called and says, I think this is it. So we all got that 2-hour drive. We were there. Ohio State had just beaten Maryland in overtime. Like, who knew? My dad was able to know that was happening, and then he died. And we were all there. And our first thought then, and when my mom died recently, was like, we did it. We did it. We stayed together as a team. We gave them what they wanted. You can see I'm getting choked up. It was an amazing time, but it doesn't mean it was easy. That is for sure.
Right.
I actually have a screen I wanted to share that this is, and one thing I know you, Jerry, because you work with a lot of adult children and spouses on what that means to care for somebody. So let me share this screen real quick. Because one thing we know for sure is, are you able to see that, the know your limitations?
I am, yeah.
That it is taxing a duty in our lives. We know that 40% of all care partners, that's what we've started calling the family members care partners, to distinguish from the caregivers, who are the professional paid people. But 40% of all care partners die before the person they're caring for. And it doesn't seem like that can happen. We've had patients who are clients, who are dying of COPD and cancer, and you think for sure that they only have months to live, and yet their spouse looks very healthy. They're going shopping, they're doing all the things they want to do, but because of that stress, believe it or not, that often that really healthy family member is the one who somehow dies first. And it's just, so you have to take care of yourself. You have to recognize your own limitations and only do what you can do. 90% of care partners experience stress. I think all four of us siblings could say that, even though, it was what we should be doing. It wasn't bad stress, it was just stress. 69% report less time with family and friends. Something's got to give, right? If you're caring for an older adult. 51% are taking more medication than they ever had to. And I would guess that a lot of that is anti-anxiety medication. And 10% report frequent use of alcohol or prescriptions in order to cope with the stress. So that's what we're dealing with when we know that a loved one needs us.
Right. Another thing that comes to mind is, at what point do you have to admit as a family that you need some outside help?
I like that.
Are there signs for that?
Yeah, that is a moving target. One thing I know with elder care in general, it is not all or nothing. It is truly you will get very good at one day at a time. You have to get very good at one day at a time. If you try to have a family meeting and say, what are we going to do for the next 6 months? That's very doable. If you say, what's going to happen in 2 or 3 or 5 years when this happens, that's not necessarily a good place to start. So you have to be really good at just sort of that one day at a time. It's really important to know that there's so much unknown and being okay with that. And I think kind of funny because COVID has prepared a lot of us for understanding what it means to live in the unknown. And it's kind of that way with elder care as well. You can, many times many families, we recommend, you sort of ease into it, helping an older adult. You recognize that something might be amiss. You go to your parents' house for Christmas and you recognize that there's a stack of bills on the desk when every time you've been there before, it was always handled. So there are often little signs that things are happening. And that is really when you should start coming into their lives in that caregiver role. So I think any older adults, even without dementia, like the opportunity of having their children at least know what's going on in their lives. They may not seem that way, but it's a scary thing sometimes when you start to recognize that your life is a little bit more chaotic than you'd like it to be. And having someone say, hey, let's get these bills under control, I'd love to help, can be a blessing for an older adult.
I know in my dad's case, I was the only sibling in town, and he didn't want to bother me. He knew I was working full time, so he kind of tried to hide things in a nice way and in a thoughtful way. But it was really concerning because it took me a while to really catch on to what his needs were. Yeah.
Well, how did you have that conversation with them, Jerry? How'd that happen? How'd that come about?
That too was tough. I mean, to become the parent of the parent almost, and kind of take control of those discussions. But I was fortunate because he was pretty easy type person, and once we broke the ice, that he kind of had self-awareness, I think.
Yeah.
Time to turn over the keys to the car and those types of things.
Yeah.
Now, do you ever get, and I kind of come back to this because with multiple siblings, I guess I run into many problems within the sibling groupings. Do you ever, as an outsider, be asked to come in and kind of help manage and set things in place?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. The people who do elder care professionally are a great resource to anybody who has a question about what to do next, or how do I get my siblings and I on the same page, or how do we get it? That's the time to bring in somebody, even if they're not in that initial family meeting or on that phone call. Make contact with somebody and say, we just had a call yesterday, for example, and she says, I think it's time to start thinking about help from my aunt and uncle. We're going to have a family meeting next week to start talking about their choices. And I go, you did the right thing by calling now, because I can give you some resources, some questions to ask each other, some things you need to think about, so that when you meet, you have at least a framework from where to start. So yes, and so there's not just companies like mine that do the in-home care. There are geriatric care managers or aging life specialists now, who that's what they do. They, or social workers who are used to working with families to help them come up with the best solutions. So definitely bringing an outsider in to help the family figure things out is a really good step. Unless there's somebody who's just a good, strong leader, and a good leader in that sense, Jerry, means not somebody who's the boss, but somebody who's good about listening to everybody and letting everybody have input, and making sure that everybody is being heard.
Now, I think we're going to have other programs to really get into a lot of the cost factors. In fact, last week you talked about the cost of giving care, and then the cost of providing care, and what different levels of care cost. Without going into that in too much depth, can you maybe touch on that again? It might be a little bit of a review, but.
Yeah. Well, that's great, because it's important. So, I mean, when you talk about having help for older adults, people automatically go to home care or moving to a facility. And that may be the case. Sometimes people need that immediately. You recognize there's a need that you've been missing. But oftentimes help starts with, let's get you lawn care, mom and dad, or let's get a housekeeper in here every other week. Let's use home delivered meals, or instead of driving, let's start using, Go-Go Grandma or Lyft, or, So there's different ways to have help that do cost some money early on that are inexpensive, but really help people live their lives in a way that they were used to. And then when you start recognizing that help is needed, a lot of people start with just maybe, a couple hours a day, a couple days a week of having some help in the home, having professional caregivers come in and help with the housekeeping, helping with getting some meals ready, driving to appointments, and things like that. So if you're dealing with home care in that sense, you're looking at paying an hourly rate for the most part, anywhere from maybe $22 to $30 an hour. That's just a really broad range, but that's kind of what we have found to be the case here in Central Ohio, which is pretty much similar for all of the Midwest. So that's what you can kind of look at. The nice thing about starting with home care is that it's not all or nothing. It's not like, oh gosh, mom, we know that there's something going on. You need a little bit of help. So let's pack everything up that you've loved into the U-Haul, sell half of it, and move you into an 1,800 or an 800 square foot place, down the street. So that doesn't have to be your first reaction. Home care is a lot of people, like my parents, have it till the end of life. But if nothing else, it is a good way to bring in help so that family doesn't have to bear all of that burden. And you can do it gradually, moving to higher levels of care. Because not only does not every family member want to be a hands-on direct caregiver, many times parents don't want that from their children. And that's maybe, Jerry, why they're hiding it from you. They're a little bit embarrassed. They want to be seen as the strong one, the one who takes care of the family, not the one who's taken care of. So we see people who the daughters or sons will say, there's absolutely no way mom will ever accept help because she won't even let me, bring a meal over. But as soon as we put someone in the home, they've now got a new companion, a new friend, somebody who's not a family member who can be their right arm. And that, surprisingly, I'd say 95% of the time, that is a complete success, even to the surprise of the daughters and sons who didn't think they'd ever accept help.
Something you said was exactly right. In my case, I was able to help him go to the grocery and things like that. But there became a point where helping with showers and things like that, he wanted to keep me in the role of a son and not a caregiver. Yeah. So that's when it became easy for him to accept caregiving. Now, he wanted a male caregiver, however. So that was kind of extra difficult to find, quite frankly, at the time. This goes back a number of years. I don't know if that picture has changed or whether that requirement you see that much, but
it is. I mean, we are able to really choose, to match caregivers and clients pretty well. We do have male caregivers, but it's not as common. And we do have men who requested that, especially men who might have Parkinson's or dementia, and they just like palling around with guys, and they want to go out to the golf course, and they feel like that's a guy and guy thing to do.
Right.
So we've seen that over the years. We get that, and I understand it. But most men they see women in that role for the most part.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you might want to deal with this at a more deeper discussion later on, but what I was curious about is I've kind of lost my train of thought, to be honest on that.
Why?
Well, I think it was, if somebody's interviewing a home care agency, what's the criteria, or is there a resource they can go to ask the right questions?
Yeah, I mean, I always say, use your gut. That's number one, because you're going to be working with the company that's on the other end of that phone. You want somebody who they understand the whole scope of elder care. They're not just asking you questions like they're filling out a form and then saying, great, we'll have a caregiver there on Monday. It's somebody who's able to hear what you're saying, to say, let's send someone over there to do an assessment, to involve your parents in the conversation. Like, you don't want a son or a daughter to say, here's what we're doing, mom. You want to, an outside company to say, what do you want? What do you need? What are you particular about? What are you looking for? So we're hoping, that families understand that we want to involve the parent, and we can do that early on to make that difference.
And in terms of, it sounds like you can customize care, at least your organization seems to do that. What about the training and the type of people that I guess you hire
Yeah.
to do this kind of work?
Well, it's an investment. Hiring and keeping good people is an investment. So it may seem like a lot of people in the elder care industry have the same people bouncing around between us. Our number one goal is once we find those good people, and they jump through a lot of hoops to come work for us because we have health benefits, we have 401k, and we have a lot of training. But it's important to make sure that the company you're talking to is doing background checks for one thing. We don't have that many problems, believe it or not. It's not like a lot of criminals want to be in this industry. They know we're going to find them, so they don't come this way. We don't have that issue, but still make sure the company does background checks, make sure they're doing training, make sure that they've got the ability to replace somebody, because if you go to a restaurant today, Jerry, and one of the waiters called off, you wouldn't necessarily notice, right? You would notice that the whole restaurant is scrambling because two people have called off and they're all just filling in tables. And you wouldn't say, well, I'm here today and I expected Jerry to wait on me. Where's Jerry?
Right.
That's what happens in home care, right? So it looks like people call off a lot and they don't any more than anybody else. It's just that you're used to that person being there. So one of the things that we do, and I know other companies do too, is make sure we guarantee that somebody will be there if that person is sick, because we don't want anybody going to work if they're sick. Making sure there is somebody there, and that there's a process in place so that the replacement, we introduce them. We have our care management team introduce the replacement to the family, so that there's not a stranger knocking at their door. So just making sure that detail of the care, of managing the care, is in place is really important. And I know we keep talking about, the care giving only per se, like the hands-on, but there are other things. I just want to point out a couple things that I've learned over the years too, because I think even if you do hire somebody to do the direct care, because that is not your thing, you still have a big role in advocacy for the older adults in your life. So Jerry, just a couple things. I'm going to put up a screen real quick. I know we're coming to the end here. Hang on here, let me move this. So providing hands-on direct care is just one way that you can help. You can also advocate. So I put some ideas here. So if you are a family member who doesn't want to do the direct care, then you can help with the organization of things, right? Medical, financial, legal information, getting all that together and make sure that it's all in one place. The second bullet there under advocate is something that's really important, is lining up approvals for conversations. So I needed to talk to my dad's doctor, but he first had to get approval from my dad to talk to me. I wanted to talk to my parents' financial planner, but I first had to get approval. The financial planner had to get approval from my parents to talk to me. Same thing with lawyers and banks. If you can get all that lined up, well, before any signs are there, that is an incredible gift that you can just pick up that phone and they know that you're advocating on behalf of them with their permission. Set up online banking as early as possible if your loved one's not already doing that. Even if they're not paying bills that way, at least there's somebody able to kind of keep an eye on it to make sure that things aren't going funny. We set up a common email. So my parents' last name, we use like the Smiths, that's not their last name, thesmiths@gmail.com, so that we could have all doctors and financial planners and everybody, all four of us siblings we're talking to, we're sending things to that one email so that any one of us could get on and see what emails were being sent and responded to. So there are ways to just really think about what you need to do so that you can be ready for whatever may come. And those are just some ideas I thought I'd want to share with all of you.
Well, that is great. And, our time at closing is starting to occur now. So again, we invite questions. We thank you for tuning in, and we will talk with all of you later.
Thanks, Terry.
Bye-bye.
Bye.